Hello again. 100 subscribers, which is, interesting. So thank you. And it's good, that people are interested. I mean, that's small potatoes, but to a lot of channels. But that's more, like when I had like maybe 10 or 20, I was like, yeah, okay, 20, that sounds about right. But now I got 100, so that seems a bit more than I expected. But anyway, that's fine. That means that people have an interest on some level, right? I don't want to overstate it. Some people might be mildly interested, but others might be more interested. So that's good. So anyway, 100 viewers, 100 subscribers. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's just do some announcements and quick story. So I stated in my comment I'm going to talk about um, something that happened to me, something that I went through when I was going to elementary school. When I was fifth grade, yeah, so I was about 11. And so I attended a school in Southern California in Los Angeles, Elysian Heights Elementary. And so this is the 1970s, 1977, long time ago. So this was during the time that Benjamin Roden is still alive, the original Branch Davidian prophet. And and I've stated this before, I'm living a very standard Southern California secular life in many ways. Okay. We were not super religious family. So I define being super religious as like everybody's praying all the time, whatever, you're having Bible studies all the time, that kind of stuff. That was not my life. Now, I did go to Bible studies. That would be local Branch Davidian studies that were held maybe 2 or 3 times a month at someone's house or at a rented facility. And I would sit there and listen to an adult read from some tract or from scripture and give about a 2 hour long study, which was excruciating for a child to sit still for 2 hours, but I didn't like them. But anyway, obviously you're around the talk and you're absorbing ideas and things about the Bible, and you hear all the buzzwords: judgment, slaughters, seals, angels, uh, messages. You're hearing all the buzzwords, even soul. Yeah, I heard soul a lot. In fact, one time I asked my father when I was, let's just say I was about 8 or 9 years old. One day, just out of the blue, randomly, "What's a soul, Dad?" You know, I caught him like off guard. He's walking to the kitchen or something. "Hey, Dad, what's a soul?" And my father's response was very strange to me at the time. He was like, I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that it's already been discussed in class and you should know the answer already." Something like that. That's the gist of what he said. And I was like, huh? I, I didn't remember any time that we talked about soul. Anyway, you know how when you're a kid and you're in the world of the adults, and so adults are super smart and you're just a kid, but then you store something away in your brain and you grow up, you play it back. Oh, I see what's going on there. Yeah, my father was full of shit. He didn't know what a soul was. At least he didn't know in the way where you could explain it simply to somebody like a kid, right? He didn't have a definition ready to give out in his mind. So in other words, he wasn't really clear on what a soul was either, but he was embarrassed to admit it to his little son, who is essentially acting like a little Socrates. That's what Socrates did in ancient Athens. If you don't know, he would go around and ask annoying questions about things that everybody, what is justice? What is truth? What is, mercy? Like everybody thinks, of course, that's easy. And he would keep drilling down until people started to realize, no, we don't really know exactly what that is. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, that's one of my experiences with my dad growing up. So my dad wasn't some kind of super knowledgeable person in the branch message in terms of being able to explain it clearly to children. So Okay. Anyway, I was going to mention the school cat. This school that I attended, Elysian Heights, had a cat that showed up one day in the 1940s and lived till, I don't know, for about 18 years old until 68. Well, that would be, maybe it was older than that. It showed up young, maybe in the late 40s, and then died in 1968. It was the school cat. It adopted the school. And the school came to love this cat. The principal of the school, I'll put up a clip art here, the book that she wrote, A Cat Called Roommate. Famous cat at the time, made the national news and was like a local celebrity. And they even put a painting of the cat up on the wall. I would see it, walked into the school, and you could see the cat on the wall. They had a little diorama they had made, professionally made out of bronze. It showed the cat walking along with some children. Big deal, at the time. And the cat was, like, the cat died 2 years before I got to the school, but man, it was weird. It was like I knew the cat. I even had a friend in junior high whose father had been a principal at the school, or a teacher, not a principal, a teacher, and he saw the cat and knew the cat and actually wrote a poem. So it was an interesting experience to go to a school that had a cat, almost like a minor deity in a way. Interesting. Okay, so, all right, so let's tell the story. All right, so let's, I'll put the scripture up here. So there's a scripture, I'm pointing the wrong way. I want to put it over here, sorry. There's a scripture in Zechariah that talks about the Lord's feet standing on the Mount of Olives. Okay, this is like an apocalyptic type prophecy of the future. Something big is going to happen, right? And I started hearing the adults in the group, so this is about 1977. I started hearing the adults in the group talk about the Lord's feet are going to stand on the Mount of Olives. And this was specifically Benjamin Roden. Excuse me. Okay. So I was expecting a supernatural event. I'm going to have to take a little break here and clear my throat. I will be back. Okay. A little water here. All right. Okay, so I interpreted the talk that the adults were trading around concerning Benjamin Roden and standing on the Mount of Olives, the Lord's feet, as a supernatural event that was coming very soon. And I was like, wow, it's amazing. The end of the world. And this is in keeping with what I'd been hearing. My father had been talking about the end of the world since I was a kid. And there was all kinds of charts. And I'll put maybe an image of some charts that I grew up seeing when I was growing up. Some pretty disturbing imagery on some of these charts. So, yeah, I was infused with this kind of stuff. So to clarify what I said earlier, it would come in spurts. In other words, most of the time, I was just living a normal life, playing outside, whatever, doing kid stuff, watching cartoons, Bugs Bunny cartoons, whatever, Little Rascals, all kinds of stuff. But then, periodically I would go to these studies that would happen maybe, like I said, 3 times a month, sit for 2 hours and listen to this stuff and then go home and it would just, you forget about it. But in this particular case, it had gotten into my brain and I started thinking a lot about, wow, the Lord's feet on the Mount of Olives and Benjamin Roden. And Benjamin Roden had been talked up to me over the years. Again, my father never said anything negative about Benjamin Roden. He was the prophet. And so I would think about the things the adults were saying about Benjamin Roden and the prophet, and he was going to live forever anyway, and wow, that's amazing. And he's going to stand on the Mount of Olives. I had this image of like Iron Man sort of descending from heaven, and like this great stuff was going to happen. Just really, my mind was going in terms of thinking about all the amazing things that were going to happen. So at school, at recess, for example, I was preaching to the kids. You don't believe it, but it's true. He's going to stand on the Mount of Olives, like I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm sure they didn't. In fact, there was one kid, it was actually a friend of mine, Eric. He's like, Dave was a preacher. They're making fun of me. And there was a teacher named Mrs. Vucevic who was concerned about me. She thought this is a bit strange for David. They called my mom, but I guess my mom wasn't worried about it because maybe she thought that's what we do. We're Branch Davidians. We believe weird things. Anyway, okay. Well, okay. Okay, so what happened is that George Roden came to visit Southern California on a trip to tell us about this event, the Lord's feet standing on the Mount of Olives. Oh, I'm thinking I must have missed it or something. Wait a minute. It happened already? And so it was a slideshow of some photographs that they had taken. And as I watched the slideshow, and I began to dawn on me, oh, you mean they got in a plane and they flew over to Israel, and then they drove up to the Mount of Olives, and then they walked up to the Mount of Olives. Like, all of a sudden, I completely lost interest. This is boring. Oh, never mind. Oh. And it wasn't necessarily an existential crisis or anything. It's just I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess I didn't understand, right? But it's not like my life was crushed or anything, or I was depressed. Because I was 11, Star Wars came out shortly thereafter. That took my attention away from all this stuff pretty quick, I can tell you. Yeah, this is right around the time that Star Wars came out, very shortly. Within the next month or two, I was thinking about Star Wars, and this is gone. So yeah, so that's my little story about my childhood experience. So, all right, now to discuss Lois Roden. Introduction. So the next video, which is coming up this weekend, hopefully by Sunday, we're going to, and I don't know if it's going to be more than one part because it's a big subject, so it may be more than one part. So we're going to discuss the relationship between Lois Roden and Vernon Howell. Okay, that's who he was when he came to Mount Carmel in 1981. And you can't understand origins of David Koresh without understanding this, because this is formative. His experience with Lois Roden and his formation of his early message in interaction with her, and her endorsement of him initially. And then there was some agreement at first, but then it quickly degenerated into disagreement and disappointment and everything. So I'll tell that story. It's quite fascinating. And I know the story pretty well. There's some hazy stuff that I'm not sure about, but I do have access to inside information in terms of my mother-in-law was there. She's getting on in years, but yeah, I know some stuff from what she's told me. My wife was there at the time. She wasn't, she was 15, so it's not like she was dialed in, paying super close attention, but she knows some stuff too. And then I have knowledge that I've gotten from other people. There's a guy that I talked to who was there as well. So I have some information that may not be commonly known. So yeah, I can make a presentation and discuss it, and we can learn some things about this really super important historical event in David Koresh's life concerning this important relationship, this event, this meeting her, and then going through the 2 years of being in the school of Lois Roden is what I mean, and then graduating into being a prophet himself and all of that. So anyway, so signing off for now. I just wanted this to be a short little video. Again, thank everybody for the ones who are subscribing. I appreciate it. And hopefully I can keep having ideas on things to talk about, which I think it'll be a while before I run out. There's a lot to talk about. So I will see you next weekend, hopefully.